This is Land of Havilah, Daniel 11a. The glorious man over the water is speaking. For the most part, he'll be the only speaker from now to the end of the book. He'll tell Daniel about future kingdoms leading up to the final evil kingdom of the end. In the last chapter, he was just saying that he and Michael were engaged in battle against the prince of Persia, and soon the prince of Greece would come. It was a snapshot of the continual high-level spiritual warfare that goes on in heavenly places, Ephesians 6:12. It's also a battle for the release of prophecy and spiritual insight to mankind. The prince of Persia in no way wanted to release the glorious man to come to Daniel to give him understanding, but Michael came to help, and here the glorious man is. He says, verse 1, "As for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him." Comment, that was one more little insight into spiritual battle. In the first year of Darius, the forces of darkness must have been trying to weaken Darius, because the glorious man says he fought to confirm and strengthen him. Now the glorious man will go on to warfare on earth as it relates to the promised land for the next several hundred years. Verse 1. "Now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will stand up in Persia, and the 4th will be far richer than all of them. When he has grown strong through his riches, he'll stir up all against the realm of Greece." Comment, the glorious man says 3 more kings will stand up in Persia. Keeping in mind the vision was in the 3rd year of Cyrus, secular history tells us the next 3 kings were Cambyses II, Bardaiah, and Darius I, also known as Darius the Great. He was richer than all the Persian kings who came before and after, richer than all of them, as the verse says. He ruled during the Persian Empire's territorial and economic peak. He invaded Greece, according to the glorious man's prediction that he would stir up the realm of Persia against Greece. His successor, Xerxes I, also invaded Greece. Of course, Persian invasion of Greece stirred up Greek sentiment against the Persians. About 150 years after Darius the Great invaded, the Greeks returned the favor under Alexander the Great. Speaking of Alexander, who would arrive 200 years after the glorious man predicted it, verse 13. "A mighty king will stand up who will rule with great dominion and do according to his will. When he stands up, his kingdom will be broken and will be divided toward the 4 winds of the sky, but not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled, for his kingdom will be plucked up even for others besides these." Comment, in verse 3, a king will stand up who will rule with great dominion and do according to his will. Verse 4 gives his identity away in that when he stands, his kingdom will be broken and divided. This is Alexander the Great. He stirred up his Greek kingdom in the spirit of revenge against the Persians and conquered all their territory in a matter of 13 years, then died at the age of 32. This coincides with verse 4 that says, when he stands, his kingdom will be broken. About as soon as he stood, he died. Some of his generals, called the Diadochi, fought among themselves for the kingdom, divided it, with each proclaiming himself king over his own part. This is predicted in verse 4, which says the kingdom would be divided to the 4 winds. And it's also predicted in verse 4, and that the kingdom wouldn't go to Alexander's heirs, which was true, because the Diadochi were not Alexander's heirs. As it concerned the Jews, they returned to the Promised Land, and after the Persians fell, Alexander became their king briefly. Then the Diadochi fought for control of the area, particularly the Seleucids based north of the Promised Land in Syria, and the Ptolemies based south of the Promised Land in Egypt. As time went by, the Seleucids and Ptolemies warred frequently, with the Jews caught in the middle, control of the Promised Land being passed back and forth, north and south. Now, in a long passage from verses 5 to 32 coming up, the glorious man will give some detailed accounts of those wars between the Seleucids and Ptolemies. Speaking of the Ptolemies based in Egypt, verse 5. "The king of the south will be strong. One of his princes will become stronger than him and have dominion. His dominion will be a great dominion. At the end of years they will join themselves together, and the daughter of the king of the south will come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she'll not retain the strength of her arm. He also will not stand, nor will his arm, but she'll be given up, and those who brought her, and he who became the father of her, and he who strengthened her in those times." Comment in verse 6, the joining together of the north and south, the Seleucids and Ptolemies, was fulfilled about 250 B.C. when Ptolemy II Philadelphus made a marriage covenant with Antiochus II Theos. The agreement was that Antiochus II would marry Ptolemy II's daughter, and Antiochus would name a son from that marriage as his heir to the Seleucid kingdom. This required him to divorce his current wife named Laodice and disinherit her children. So he did, and his new wife was Bernice, daughter of the king of the south. The treaty held up until Bernice's father back in Egypt died. Then Antiochus renounced Bernice and remarried Laodice. But that wasn't enough for Laodice. She held a grudge, poisoned Antiochus II, even though he had remarried her, killed Bernice and killed their infant son, and she killed all Bernice's entourage who had come with her from Egypt and were supporting her. This secured the kingdom for her own son. In verse 6, those who brought her, who were given up, were Bernice's entourage, the ones who brought her to Syria. In verse 6, the arm is the infant son. Neither he nor his father the king, nor his mother Bernice, nor them who brought her would stand, because Laodice killed them all. And the glorious man predicted it about 286 years in advance. Verse 7. But out of a shoot from her roots one will stand up in his place, who will come to the army, and will enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and will deal against them, and will prevail. He'll also carry their gods with their molten images, and with their goodly vessels of silver and of gold captive into Egypt. He'll refrain some years from the king of the north. Comment in verses 7 and 8, Bernice's roots are her parents back in Egypt, and the shoot from those roots is her brother who became king. He became king of the Ptolemaic kingdom and assumed the name Ptolemy III. To avenge his sister, he came north with his army, entered the fortress of the Seleucids, which was the city of Antioch, dealt with them and prevailed. By some accounts, he executed Laodice. He advanced into the Seleucid kingdom as far as Babylon and took possession of numerous idols and goodly vessels of silver and gold, as verse 8 says. He took them captive to Egypt and refrained some years from further attacks, as the verse says. And again, your narrator is no particular history scholar, but anyone can go to AI these days, ask specific questions about history, and get instant answers. Verse 9. He'll come into the realm of the king of the south, but he'll return into his own land. Comment in verse 9, Seleucus II attempted a counterattack against Egypt around 242, but he failed and returned to his own land. The fulfillment of verse 9 came 294 years after the glorious man announced it. Now he goes on to what will happen next, speaking of the sons of Seleucus II in the north, verse 10. His sons will wage war and will assemble a multitude of great forces, which will come on and overflow and pass through. They will return and wage war even to his fortress. Comment, the sons of Seleucus II of the north are Seleucus III and Antiochus III. As the verse says, they waged successful wars against the Ptolemies, regained much of their land their father lost, and pushed the border of the Ptolemies all the way to Egypt. Verse 11. The king of the south will be moved with anger and will come out and fight with him, even with the king of the north. He'll send out a great multitude, and the multitude will be given into his hand. Comment in verse 11, the king of the south was Ptolemy IV, and king of the north Antiochus III. The great multitude was an army from the north of about 70,000. The north and south met at the decisive battle of Raphia, where the south routed the north, Raphia being modern Rafah of the Gaza Strip. Verse 12. The multitude will be lifted up, and his heart will be exalted. He'll cast down tens of thousands, but he won't prevail. Comment, the fulfillment of verse 12 is that despite Ptolemy IV's victory at Raphia in 217 B.C., where he cast down thousands of Seleucid troops, his kingdom didn't thrive because of internal instability. His power declined. Verse 13. The king of the north will return and will send out a multitude greater than the former. He'll come on at the end of times, even of years, with a great army and with much substance. Comment, in the 15 to 20 years after the battle of Raphia, the king of the north, Antiochus III, regathered his strength, then sent out a multitude against the south greater than before. He intended to reclaim the lands he had lost, including Judea. Then verse 14. In those times many will stand up against the king of the south. Also the children of the violent among your people will lift themselves up to establish the vision, but they will fall. Comment in verse 14, the king of the south was Ptolemy V, and the king of the north still Antiochus III. Many Jews sided with the north, hoping to establish the vision, which means hoping to reestablish an independent Israel. But they will fall, the verse says. The vision would not be established, verse 15. So the king of the north will come and cast up a mound and take a well-fortified city. The forces of the south won't stand, neither will his chosen people, neither will there be any strength to stand. Comment regarding verse 15, Antiochus routed Ptolemaic general Scopas at the Battle of Panium near the headwaters of the Jordan River. Scopas retreated with his chosen people, which were his elite troops, into a well-fortified city, which was Sidon. Antiochus set siege to the city. He cast up a mound against it, as the verse says, and Scopas surrendered. The year was 199, verse 16. But he who comes against him will do according to his own will, and no one will stand before him. He'll stand in the glorious land, and destruction will be in his hand. Comment in fulfillment of verse 16, after Antiochus III's victory at Sidon, he did whatever he wanted. He took control of the glorious land, which is the promised land. But the Jews fared no better. Destruction was in Antiochus's hand. Verse 17. He'll set his face to come with the strength of his whole kingdom, and with him equitable conditions. He'll perform them. He'll give him the daughter of women to corrupt her, but she will not stand and won't be for him. Comment regarding verse 17, after Antiochus III's military victories, he intended to dominate the south by diplomacy, which are the equitable conditions in verse 17. He arranged the marriage of his daughter Cleopatra I to Ptolemy V of the south, figuring her offspring would be the future kings of the south, and the south would be peaceful with them. But Cleopatra went on to side with her husband, not her father in the north. Thus she was corrupted as far as her father was concerned and wasn't for him, as the verse says. Verse 18. After this he'll turn his face to the islands and will take many, but a prince will cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Yes, moreover, he will cause his reproach to turn on him. Comment in verse 18, islands is also translated coastlands. In fulfillment, Antiochus III invaded coastlands along the Mediterranean and Asia Minor, all the way to Thrace, which in modern times is parts of Turkey, Greece, and Bulgaria. Antiochus's westward expansion threatened the Romans. The Roman general Lucius Cornelius Scipio defeated Antiochus at the Battle of Magnesia in 190. This was the turning of Antiochus's reproach back on him, as verse 18 says. The Romans imposed harsh terms on Antiochus. He became their vassal. Verse 19. Then he'll turn his face toward the fortresses of his own land, but he'll stumble and fall and won't be found. Comment in verse 19, the fulfillment was that Antiochus III returned home, and to raise funds to pay his tribute to the Romans, he attempted to plunder a temple in his own land in what's now Khuzestan, Iran. He failed in the raid and was killed either by the locals or his own forces. Thus, as the verse says, he stumbled, fell, and wasn't found. This brings us to 187 B.C., then verse 20. Then one who will cause a tax collector to pass through the kingdom to maintain its glory will stand up in his place, but within few days he shall be destroyed, not in anger and not in battle. Comment in fulfillment of verse 20, Antiochus III's son Seleucus IV took the throne and imposed heavy taxes on Judea to pay his annual Roman tribute. He sent tax collectors to pass through Judea, such as Heliodorus. Seleucus IV was destroyed in a few days, the verse says, which was 12 years, not in anger or battle, the verse says. As it happened, he died in suspicious circumstances, probably poisoned or otherwise quietly assassinated, which is consistent with the verse saying it wasn't in anger or battle. Now we come to about 175 B.C. and the rise of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, but that'll be next at Daniel 11b.